You know, we're always thinking about functional items as far as 3D paper crafting goes, and today we're going to put together our Acorn Luminary / gift box. So, if you're attending a Thanksgiving feast with a friend or with your friends or family, and you want to bring something like a gift, obviously, for the host or hostess, that can double up as a piece of decor after you give them your gift, this is exactly what you're looking for. Very festive. It's an acorn, which is, well, very synonymous with fall. And again, after you present your gift, they'll love it because you can include a little tea light with it so that they can display it during the meal or after for the holidays, whatever it may be. But let's just dive right in here. It's a symmetrical piece, so there's going to be a lot of just joining pieces together and then putting some panels on. For those of you that are veterans to Dreaming Tree, this is going to be a very familiar process. Now, I did a few things off of camera, just real simple things. I just put some vellum on these pieces. This is the main structure, the compartment that is going to hold whatever gift you give them, or the compartment that's going to hold the tea light. And all I did was I found these pieces. There's two different shapes of vellum. This is the piece that we're going to want for this. Now, if you are giving this as a gift, and this is optional, this is the way, you can do it either way. I'm putting the vellum on the inside. You, if you want to make the inside look nicer, you can glue the vellum to the outside of this panel or outside of this structural piece, because we are going to be putting this panel over it, and that will make the inside look a little bit nicer. Me personally, I am just going to be using it as a luminary, so it doesn't really matter to me where the vellum goes. But I mean, I guess I can show you both ways, and you know, the end result's going to be the same. So if you're just using it as a luminary, what I did was I flipped it over. This is the inside, and I put my glue around the little cutouts here. And then when I put this in, I put it as far over to the left or as far as I could to next to these tabs, leaving as much of this paper open so that when I glue the tab, I have more paper area to, you know, to actually glue this to. Because it's going to hold a lot better than the vellum. It still will stick to the vellum, but it's going to get a better grip if you glue it to the paper. So when you're gluing this, if you're gluing it to the inside, glue it as far over to the left as you can. Okay, now if you are doing this and using this as a gift, or a gift box I should say, you can certainly glue the vellum to the outside and then put the panel on over it like this. So I'm going to do one on this side. The rest of these I did on the other side, on the inside, because I'm using it as a luminary. But the process is going to be the same. So I'm going to go ahead and begin by getting my glue around the cutouts here. I'm probably going a little heavy here on the glue, but it's okay. It's the first little squirt that I've squirted out of this bottle in about an hour or so. So anyway. Okay, so just place that nice, get it as centered as you possibly can, just to make sure that when we put the panel down, that it covers it up and it's not sticking out. The panel is pretty wide, so you have to be really, really off to not line it up properly. Okay, but you can see there's no difference aside from the fact that the inside is going to look a little bit cleaner. So either way, doesn't matter how you do it. It all depends on what you're going to be using it for. So once you have all of your vellum on, and this is just the bottom, we'll worry about the lid in a little bit here. All of these pieces are identical. They're exactly the same, so it doesn't matter what order they go in. I'm going to grab these, okay, and we are just simply going to begin putting this together, okay? And we'll probably start up at the top. So we have this longer tab here at the top, and we'll begin just getting that glued down. I'm going to start by basically anchoring these two pieces together using this tab And I think that it's probably the most accurate section. Well, it gives you the opportunity to be more accurate because it's nice and straight, there's no curve, and that's going to set a good tone for the rest of the project. So just make sure you get that nice and lined up, as the rest of this piece is going to kind of curve in slightly. But this is nice and straight, and you can even fold it over onto itself just to check your work. It should sit nice and flush with the other cutouts. Okay, and then we can take this and fold it over to reveal the remaining tabs. And I think I'm just going to do all of these at the same time. And I'm just going to go a little bit heavier on the glue towards the bottom, since I'll be spending a little bit of time getting everything lined up on the first 3 tabs. Okay, so all we need to do is just get them nice and lined up. And then as you make your way down, it is going to be curving in ever so slightly. So make sure that you follow that natural curve that's there. And then once you get those all in place, just work your way back up and just press on those tabs one more time just to make sure they're making good contact. Okay, so there you go. We've got 2 sections already connected, and you can see what that looks like on the inside. Okay? Very simple, and it's going to be a little bit of a repetitive task, but not difficult at all. So again, we're going to start here with this tab, this long one. It's going to help us get the top nice and aligned, and everything else will fall into place nicely. So you've got 2 visual reference points that you can look at. You've got this little, well, you've got the top, so make sure that that's nice and flush. And then you also have this little horizontal score line here that you want to make sure just matches up with its neighbor. And that's a good indicator that if you get it right, that you've got it perfectly where it needs to be. Okay, and you can fold that out of the way. And from top to bottom, we're going to go a little bit of glue. And then as you get down towards the bottom, throw a little bit more on there because we'll be getting to those sections last. And we want to make sure that all of these have enough glue before it all dries out to give us enough time to go all the way down, up and down, so that everything holds nice and firm for us. And that is looking good. Okay, now right now it kind of looks kind of boxy. Now as the glue begins to set and we progress to the next section, we are going to start stretching this out. So that's very important to make sure that everything is holding nice and tight before we start progressing and kind of stressing this piece a little bit by flaring it out. All right, but anyway, moving on to the next section, starting with the long tab on top. I'll just get that on there. I'm going to spread that glue out to the very edges. And again, focusing on making sure that this is nice and aligned, nice and straight, flush at the top, and that it is meeting nicely with that horizontal score line here. You can see that there. Yep, there you go. And just do your best. There we go. Now, in between projects today, I hopped onto the Facebook group and I saw a post that our art director Ron talked about, where sometimes when our dreamers post their projects, they talk about, or they always kind of preface their post by saying, well, it's not perfect, but blah, 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 I love it, and this and that. And I'm here to tell you that I don't think you're ever going to be perfect when it comes to this stuff, because I've mentioned this before, there are a lot of factors that influence the end result. And it all begins even with, and it can be responsible with your machine. Your machine, the paper that you have, the time of day, your energy levels, how much coffee you've had, if you've not had enough coffee, your mood. Now some of those latter things, like your mood and emotional things, hopefully crafting helps you kind of ignore those things and go above them. But nevertheless, I'm just moving on to the next section. This is kind of monotonous, which is why I'm blabbing about other things now, because it's repetitive. But the idea is to enjoy the process and learn from it and just do your best. I can't say it enough. Just do your best, work on your technique, just pay attention to your technique, pay attention to what the things that you do good or the things that you do well. Grammar, I don't do good. But, take the good and remember it, and take the bad. Don't forget it, but just try to learn from it. And I think patience is important, but it's totally worth it. The good things don't happen in an instant. They take time and are so worth it in the end. Okay, so again, just kind of working my way down here and just making sure that getting everything nice and lined up, following that natural curve of these sections here, trying to get them as nicely aligned as possible. And I'm already starting to sense some resistance here from the paper, which is normal. It's starting to, we only got one more piece left to join, and then we're gonna end up connecting it. But you can see here how we're gonna need to stretch this out here in just a moment. So you gotta make sure that we give this an opportunity to dry. Now, again, if you kind of scrub through and fast forwarded and you're looking at this and you're wondering, well, why is the panel on the outside? I was illustrating that if you're using it as a luminary, you can put the vellum inside. No one's going to see the inside. But if you're giving it as a gift, you can optionally put the vellum piece on the outside, because we're going to put the panel over it anyway, and then the inside is going to look cleaner. So that is a personal choice, personal preference that you can make and determine how you want yours to be. There's no right or wrong way. The end result is going to ultimately be the same, so you need not worry about it coming out wrong if you do it that way. Okay, so on to joining this last piece. And again, just make sure that it is nice and aligned. Give that a moment to get a good grip before you move on. And you can flip that up. And we're going to get our glue on our remaining tabs. Rather than try to do just one at a time here, it's a small enough piece to where you can move up and down the tabs very quickly, and I don't need to worry about applying one at a time. I feel like this is working out very nicely. So if it's not, and you feel like you should do maybe just one tab at a time, then you can do that. You are going to have to start, you have to flip it over and get your glue nozzle in there from a weird angle, which is kind of another reason why I wanted to do them all at the same time. But remember, if you apply just a little bit more glue towards the bottom, it won't set as fast, and it'll give you plenty of time to get down there to make a good connection. And that one needs a little extra love, so I'm going to press and hold that for a few extra seconds. Okay, so our main structure is pretty much done. We just need to now connect the two ends together. Same exact process, nothing different here. It's just that one's already connected. And then we are going to have to, technically, yeah, we're just gonna be patient here and not try to do too much, because anytime you try to do too much, it always just backfires. Okay, now try to make sure that you get this aligned nice and straight. Okay, there's going to be a little bit of resistance there. Just tell that paper where you want it to go. Get that nice and lined up. Make sure it's nice and flush at the top. And just hold that in place for a moment. Luckily, the opening is really big, so we should have no problem getting our glue bottle in there to get the rest of those tabs glued in place. Okay, so you can see the remaining tabs there, and a couple ways to approach this. You can, if you want, you can take your glue bottle and apply the glue from the inside. I'm going to try that, and I'm kind of using the nozzle, the tip of the nozzle, to kind of spread that glue where I would usually use my fingers to do that, and that's fine. And technically I can get my finger in there. Spread that nice and thin. And voila, I'm just going to finish this off. Make sure that you get it nice and aligned. And you see the difference there. When I use my finger to spread the glue out, it doesn't squirt out as much. And then when I use the glue nozzle, the tip, it kind of squirts out a little bit more and it's not as clean. So you see why I like to spread that glue out. Okay, there we go. Perfect. And just hold that bottom in place for an extra few seconds. Just make sure that it ain't going nowhere. And there we have it. We've got our structure pretty much complete. And let's put the bottom on so that this thing stays put for us. You'll notice that you have two pieces. One has a tiny little L cut into it. That is our liner. That's going to go on the inside. This is our outside piece. Let's get this glued on. We're going to begin by anchoring just one side. Okay, so go ahead and get some glue on one tab. And I can pop that in, spread that out to the very edge. There we go. And just do your best to get that aligned, nice and centered. Okay. And hold that in place until it's fully set. And that looks nice. You can flip this around, get that out of the way for a second. And let's apply our glue on the remaining tabs. Don't overdo it, but make sure you have enough to where we can spread that out. And now all of a sudden my glue bottle decides that it wants to squirt it out way heavier, so I've got way too much there. Spread that out and then just get rid of some of the excess. You don't need that much, otherwise it's going to take forever for it to set. Now I'm going to grab some from over here and spread it over to this area. That glob there, that is going to warp the paper. So I'm going to get rid of some of that. That's good. And just rub that off my finger before it cakes on. Lift these up a little bit. Now as we're bringing this down, focus on aligning the side opposite of the side that's already hinged first. Make sure that's nice and centered, because then the rest of it usually just kind of falls into place. So hold that down and then kind of, if you need to, nudge these walls in or out, depending on how things are shaping up. And before you know it, we'll have our bottom on, and just continue working your finger around the perimeter until you know that it's all nice and in place. And you can flip it over and push down from the inside, get those tabs to really hold. There we go, and our bottom looks great. Okay, so there is our structure. I'm going to throw a little bit of glue around onto the tabs on the inside. Take my little piece with the L and just pop that right in there. That is going to help reinforce our structure here, especially if it's going to be holding a gift of some sort. You just pop that right in there. Okay, and there we go. Looks good. All right, now we can go ahead and put our panels on. Now, our panels, we're going to line those up to the score mark here, and then we're going to bring it down. There's going to be a little bit of a border around the side, very thin, and then also just as thin, same thickness, right at the bottom. So my suggestion would be to start at the top. Okay, let me clean this off real quick. I'm going to clean this off and just start with one. And I'm going to get my glue up here. And I think that we probably don't need to put glue on this entire thing, but we do want to make sure that we get the glue right up to the very edge of this so it doesn't come off. Okay, and I think I'm going to do this in stages. So I'm going to get this on first. And I'm kind of making sure that I have the alignment of the cutout in the right spot. And that also kind of helps me make sure that I've got it aligned here as well, up at the top. Okay, that looks good. And I'm just going to hold that down and let that set for a second. You can actually put that down on your surface so that you're not warping the paper at all. Help it dry nice and flat. Okay, and you can see how nicely that is going to cover that little section. And now I'm taking a look here, and depending on your paper, you want to maybe take a look as well. If we just put glue here at the bottom and just kind of wrap it around and just hold it at the bottom, take a look at the sides and see if you're seeing like a really large gap there on the sides. If you are not, then I would say that you probably don't need to put a whole ton of glue on the sides here. You can probably just get away with putting glue right at the bottom. What I'm going to do, now that that's set, I'm just going to do a little tiny bit of glue over here, just really small. And then I'm going to focus on making sure that I get enough glue at the bottom, spread that out all the way to the very edge, and just take that and just hug it right around the structure, holding it right at the bottom, and then in these little side sections here where I feel like it's coming off just a tad. You want it to be hugging this structure as closely as it possibly can. And then worst case scenario, if there are little areas that are still kind of coming away from the structure, you can always use a scrap piece of paper and kind of paint some glue in there to get it to hold nicely. But that is how your panel should look on your structure, and that looks great. There's the light coming in from my studio, and you can see how nicely that's illuminating it. The oranges and the browns just look stunning. Okay, so I'm just going to move right on to our next little section here. We're going to do the same thing. Just work on it one panel at a time, starting with the very top. So I'm going to get my glue right up to the very edge and just spread that out nice and thin, right up to as far as you can go. Okay, and then get it nice, and I'm kind of looking at this diamond here and making sure that I've got that nice and aligned, and then shifting my gaze up to that horizontal score line, making sure that I've got everything nice and aligned there. And that does look like it might be a little low, but I think once the lid's on, I'm not sure you're really going to be able to tell. So put that down, press down from the inside. There we go. And then we can take this and just do a tiny little bit of glue here on the side. And then of course, our bottom, where we really need it to stick, just paint that glue out. And just make sure that it's hugging the structure here. And then just hold your, keep your finger there at the bottom just to make sure that that gets a nice, makes nice contact there. Okay, so do that a couple more times. You've got to do it 4 more times, I think. Yep, that sounds about right. 6-sided. There we go. Okay, so moving right along to our next panel. Again, this would be a point where if you are comfortable, you can go ahead and pause me and then scrub to the next section, as I'm going to be doing the same thing here. There's going to be one part where we go over the vellum instead of just the structure, but it's really no different than what I've been doing, so you can feel free to skip ahead if you'd like. Now see that one wasn't very centered, so I'm going to try that one more time. And again, not very centered. And again, not very centered. There we go. That's a lot better. And hopefully the glue's still tacky enough to where it'll hold. There we go. Yeah, there's a little bit of margin of error, or room for error, when it comes to applying this panel, because these cutouts are a little bit smaller than the ones on the structure. So thank goodness for that. Okay, so again, just throwing a tiny little bit of glue along the side here. You don't need a lot. And then focusing on this area here. And just spread that out to the very edge. And that way everything's going to sit nice and flat. And it's going to look nice. Okay, so just make sure that it's really hugging the outside here. And then hold right at the bottom. Make sure that you're not letting that go. Okay, here we go. And we got 3 more, and then we can work on our lid, and we'll be done. It's a pretty quick one, depending on how quick your glue dries. So again, one of the tips that I always say is less is more when it comes to the glue. The more you use, the longer you're gonna have to sit there and wait for it to set and cure. And the longer it's going to take for you to make this project. So just be sparse with the glue and you'll breeze right through. Okay, nice and centered. And take a look at the previous one that we just did and try to make sure that the top of this is nice and aligned with the top of the previous one as well. It's kind of a good visual guide to look at while you're doing the assembly. And we can flip her over and just get a little bit of glue along the edge there, and then just focus on the bottom. There we go. Flipping that back over, running my fingers along the edge, right on down to the bottom, kind of making sure that it's taut. And I can tell that this one here, maybe I didn't have it as taut as I do this one because it's sticking up a little bit, but we can always, if we need to, if it's looking like it's really not making contact with the side, you can always go in and just paint a little bit of glue right in there. Sounds like something just popped. And I can show you that technique here. Give me one second. So during this process, if you see that you've got a little area that maybe you don't like because it's lifting off a lot, throw a little bit of glue on the edge of a scrap piece of paper and just pop it right between that area, right underneath. Just paint a little bit of glue underneath it, wipe off any excess. And just press down in that area and just give that little area an extra TLC, a little bit of TLC, and wait for it to set, and then it'll be nice and flush up against the structure and you won't have any gaps. But I really don't think it's that noticeable unless you're staring at it from that angle, which is pretty unlikely. And this again is that whole concept of, well, this isn't perfect. Well, but you know what? At the end of the day, I think what's really important is the overall end result. There's so much going on, so much to look at, And you can sit there and nitpick any little imperfection all day long. And that really just takes the fun away from it. Okay, so nothing new here, same process. And I've got that part down nicely. I'm gonna follow up with a little bit of glue on the side and going right down to the bottom here. And just painting that right down to the bottom. If you have a little bit too much, just take it and just put some up there and just kind of spread it out. Okay, let's flip her over. And I'm just using my thumbs here on either side, on both sides, to kind of push it up against the structure and then holding it down at the bottom, and it's making really nice contact all the way through. Okay, and that just leaves one. This is the last one here. Now again, if you're scrubbing through, this is the one where instead of putting the pan or the vellum on the inside, I put it on the outside because that's going to give it a cleaner appearance from the inside. You can see how you don't see the vellum in there, but you know what? Even with the vellum in there, I think it looks cool. Almost looks like something from the set of The Price is Right, which I'm a big fan of, actually. Hoping they have a Halloween episode this year. Okay, so last one here. Let's get our glue right up at the top there. And get that nice and centered, nice and aligned, nice and flush with that horizontal score mark up at the top. Speaking of The Price is Right, I'm willing to bet there's a lot of fans that are Dreaming Tree fans that like The Price is Right too. I'm curious, for those of you on YouTube, totally not related to crafting, but what's your favorite Price is Right game? I bet a lot of you are going to say, what is it? Plinko? I think it's called Plinko. It seems to, I don't know why, but people always get excited about that game. I personally like the hole-in-one game where you have to guess the price of the item, and then depending on how many you get right, they move the spot where you putt, and usually it's for a car. I'd love to be on that game show one day. I think I'm too timid to actually be chosen for that show. You got to be kind of nutty, supposedly, from what I've read. I've done my research. I was thinking about going out there and playing, but yeah, I don't know that they would choose me. Okay, so that's done. Okay, that looks really good, actually. So now moving on to our lid of our little acorn, and you can see the difference here on the inside. Okay, you know, now looking at it now, I don't know that there's really much of a difference. I mean, there is, but either way, the little pieces of vellum in there kind of look cool from the inside. So either way, whichever way you want to do it is totally fine with me. But now we're going to move on over to our lid, and the lid is kind of, well, it's going to be a similar process where we're going to just, connect the pieces together just like we did. Probably going to start at the top just like we did and work our way down. There's a bigger curve on this one. Okay, so when we start getting towards the bottom, it's really going to curl in. This is kind of reminiscent of one of the fairy houses we did. So anyway, I'm going to start up at the top since it's the largest tab. It's going to kind of help anchor this thing a lot better than it would if we were to start at the bottom. So get your glue on that first tab and get it lined up. And now there's also vellum for this piece as well, and I kind of thought this through. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the vellum in after this whole structure is already put together. Okay. So I'm just going to get that first piece glued in place, make sure that that is anchored nicely. And then there are a series of horizontal score marks there so that you can kind of just move things out of the way to make room for the next tab here. And now again, this is, there's a lot of curving going on with this one. So I'm just going to do one tab at a time. I want to make sure that I get this done right. Okay. And it's not a problem because we're awesome crafters. We are using very little glue on each of these tabs, and it should take no more than about 5 seconds or so for that glue to take hold and bond for us. Okay, so working on the next tab here, make sure you try to get it aligned as accurately as possible. Okay, here we go. Just give it a squeeze, and then I did pre-fold all this, which is making it easier for me to kind of fold it out of the way. Okay, so you definitely want to do that. Pre-fold all these pieces so they're kind of wobbly. Otherwise you're going to end up pulling these tabs apart while the glue's trying to set because you're trying to move things out of the way. So definitely pre-fold these pieces so that they're a lot easier to move out of the way as we're moving on to the next one. Now, this bottom section here, I got a feeling that I can just do these last 3 tabs all in one shot. Shouldn't be a problem. Again, if you get too much glue on there from your bottle, just hit it with your finger, tack it up a little bit, and then that will help it. It'll help it set so much quicker. You can see that. There you go, look at that. And that last one, you gotta kind of fold that in to get that angle. You can see how that angle is there, okay? And then eventually, just like we did with the structure, once we get all the pieces in there, we're gonna start kind of stretching it out a little bit. And you can see as you stretch it out, it's in this shape right now. As you stretch it out, it really spreads out, okay? And you can see how it naturally starts to kind of curve in. So don't worry about getting that final result right now. It will happen on its own without you really having to do anything. But moving right along here to the next section, get your glue on that first tab just so that we can get this anchored, and the rest of it will go smoothly for us. And as you're putting this one in place, focus your gaze on 2 sections here. One, right at the top, making sure that that's nice and flush there, and 2, on this horizontal score line, make sure that this one is matching up with it nicely as well. Okay, I see that it's slightly different, but you know, again, this is where perfection is just not possible. You know, for all I know, my machine maybe just didn't cut that properly. It was off by just a hair, and that's what happens. So just do your best. Okay, next section here. And then I think as we get closer to the bottom there, I'll do a few tabs at a time just to speed up the process here. Because I think we've got it nice and anchored. It's nice and aligned. The rest of it, these tiny little tabs here, they're gonna go quick because we're gonna add our glue. We're gonna tacky it up a little bit with our fingers to thin out the glue. And it's gonna hold for us very nicely so that we don't spend too much time on each little section here. So I'm just tapping it, basically. Tapping that glue, and it's making it tacky. It's kind of thinning it out, adding a little bit of air and oxygen to help it start to set. And there we go. And then literally, I mean, it literally just takes one little press, and it is in place. And it will do the rest of the work itself for the most part. You know, so if you're holding it for longer than a few seconds, and it just means you have too much glue on there, and you see how I've got no glue at all squirting out anywhere. That is the ultimate, well, it's what you're shooting for, let's just say. Okay, moving right along here to the next one. And this will be done before you know it. This is a quick little piece, I think. You'll probably get this done probably in under an hour, I'd say. And not including the time it takes to cut, but that's still not bad. Okay. And let's get that on there. So again, this is nothing new here with this process. Every single thing that I've done here, just connecting these sections, has been the same thing. Just putting glue on the next tab and connecting it with the next section that corresponds to that tab, just like that. And then after we do these 2 long tabs, we can go ahead and just finish off the rest of these small tabs all in one shot. So cover it up with glue and just tack it up, thin it out. There we go. And voila. And there we go. So we got a couple more here. You can see what that's starting to look like. Okay. All right, so again, if this is something you're comfortable with now, you can feel free to pause me, and then when you're done, just scrub ahead to the next section. When you see me pull these out, these panels, that is when we'll begin the next section. We're gonna put those on, and like I mentioned, in my case, I'm gonna put the vellum on last. We're just gonna pop that right inside. The lid for this is gonna be nice and open and large. Plenty of room to get your hand in there and work from the inside. So I think that's what we're gonna end up doing. I think we're gonna do that before we build the little stem as well, so that we don't risk doing anything bad to the stem. Warping it or bending it or crushing it. Okay, and there's that. There's that next tab. Just getting it connected. And we can fold this out of the way. And that one, I don't think I was patient enough with that one, but that's fine. These tabs will kind of pick up the slack there. Okay, there's the last few tabs. Get that glue out to the edge and thin it out, tack it up a little bit so that you can literally just press it once and it will stick. Just like that. And that last one, don't forget to kind of tuck that last one in a little bit, because that one's kind of starting to change direction as you get to the bottom. So I'm going to start kind of curving inward. Okay, so now here is where, okay, we need to start kind of pulling this thing out. You see we need room for one more little panel or one more structural piece in here. Well, technically we don't need to worry too much about it yet, but we will when we go to join everything together. So let's focus on one thing at a time though. And let's just get that tab going. We'll get this one connected to it. Oh boy, here we go. Okay. And there we go. All right. And the next tab, tack it up. And just join those two together. And then we just got that last section of the small little teeth to go. And some glue there, there, and there. And work that out to the edge, thin it out, tack it up. That way we can just breeze right through this. There we go. There's one. And there's another. That one. That one. This one's starting to change direction now. And then finally the last one. There we go. Okay, so there you go. And now you can kind of flip this around. And as long as we get this first tab in, you can see that first tab there. Nothing different here, except that we're just joining everything together. Let me get some glue out to the edge there. I'll tack that up. And I just want to show you what I'm doing here. Just taking this tab and I'm folding it over onto the back side of this section. Same exact thing. Oh, you can see it there. Okay. Now this is where there's gonna be some resistance, so you're gonna have to kind of hold it nice and strong. And just make sure that you've got it nice and lined up. You can kind of stick your finger in through the top. That might help a little bit. Okay, once you've got that, you can flip her over and get your glue on the next tab, the second tab from the top. Go easy on the glue there. And this is still pretty malleable, so you can definitely move it around however you need to get your glue in place. And then just like that. And that just leaves our 5 little teeth on the bottom. And we'll get this guy closed up. And one, can you see that? Yeah, you can see that. I'll try to move it out of the way a bit. Same thing. It's just that this one's already connected. It's like the first piece that we glued. Okay. And just do your best to align that nicely. There's one little squeeze. There's another little squeeze. And another. And this is where you want to make sure that you get it lined up nicely there at the bottom. I may have to go back in and re-glue that. We'll see. There we go. No, that looks good. Not perfect, but certainly gonna do the trick. There we go. Okay, so you can see how nicely this is gonna go on. And coming. There you go. Okay, and we've got these holes lined up with the other holes. Well, that was a feat of engineering so that the light can shine through. Okay, so we've got our lid assembled. Now we need to put our stem together. And the stem is made up of these 3 pieces. They are numbered. They've got the little Roman numeral numbering system here. And we're going to, just start folding. First thing we need to do, obviously, is get everything nice and folded. And then we'll piece everything together. And then put our panels on, and pretty much we'll be done. So do your best to, this is a pretty small little piece, and then there's little sections here with some really small tabs. Just do your best to get those folded. And before you know it, now you'll notice on these pieces here, there's a section of larger tabs here. These are going to be fed through the top of the lid, and they're going to get glued to the inside to kind of secure the piece in place. Okay, so let's just finish folding this one. And then again, we've got a little numbering system on this, and we're going to join all these little sections together to form one solid piece. Okay, and you want to keep all of the large tabs kind of pointed maybe in either direction, up or down. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to join piece number 1 to piece number 2 right here, like so. Now we would have loved to have kept everything all together, but the way that things line up, or well, basically the way that this thing, the shape of it prevented us from doing so. So we do have to kind of join some pieces together. It's not really possible for them to cut out like that. So anyway, here's piece number 1. It's got the little Roman numeral 1 there. We're going to join it to the side of this piece here. Okay, so just pop that in place. Make sure you get it nice and aligned. And press that into place. Okay, and then this is piece number 2. You've got the Roman numeral 2. We're going to glue this piece right to that tab with the Roman numeral 2 on it. So go ahead and get your glue on there. Get it out to the edges, just to make sure that it's completely covered. Just like that. Do your best to get that nice and aligned, like so. Okay, and then you can kind of see where we're going with this. Now we can pull this one out of the way. Let's just do this top tab here and get that glued into place. A little tough to get my finger in there, but I got it. And just line that up with that section there. Okay, so far so good. And now this one here, it's got a really tiny little tab. That's okay, just throw a little bit of glue on there, tuck it behind this piece, just line it up and give it a squeeze. Okay, that's good. Can move this one out of the way. We've got this larger tab here. Get some glue on that piece. Try to get it out to the edge as well. And line that up nice and straight. And you'll notice that as you're doing that, it's going to begin to pretty much form. And this last one here, I should have held that one down a little bit longer because the tab's so tiny. So be patient with this piece. It is pretty dainty. Okay, we can move this out of the way and apply glue onto our next tab here. There we go. And line that next piece up. There we go. I'm going to have to re-glue that piece because I wasn't patient enough with it. So I'm going to throw a little bit more glue on it. And this time I am going to wait a little bit longer to make sure that it gets a good hold. If you need to, you can kind of push it from here over into this little side piece here. And be patient with it. Let it really fully set before you move on. Okay. Okay, I think that's good. So now, you know what? We have one more little section up here that I forgot about. We've got this little tab here, so let's get that glued into place before we join this whole thing together. So tuck that in, line it up nicely, and give that a squeeze. Here we go. Okay, and now we can go ahead and close this up. Okay, so I'm going to put glue on both of these final tabs here, just because it may be difficult to get your glue nozzle in there later on. If we have both of these, well, if we just do one section at a time, it may be difficult to pull it back without ripping it up, because it is kind of a, you know, this one came apart again. My glue is not working today. I gotta fix that one real quick. I'll tuck it back in and give it a squeeze. And this glue should be nice and tacky by now. Hopefully it's not too dry. And just get that lined up. If you need to, at this point, you can grab a dowel. My dowel's all the way over here. You can take your dowel and put it inside up there to help you get better contact with this section here. And I'm going to say that, yeah, because I went back and fixed that other one, that dried up on me. So I'm going to grab a scrap piece of paper and throw a little bit of glue on there and just paint it right under here so we can get that glued into place. Just like that. You know, just pop my dowel under there. You could probably still get your finger in there too, actually. Yep. Just have to move some things aside. Okay, so now all that's left to do, you've got these tiny little triangular tabs up at the top. We're going to fold those down and I'm going to get some glue on these little guys here. Just a tiny little drop, and then I'm going to use my finger to kind of spread that out, or if you got a scrap piece of paper or any other tool that you want to use. I kind of like to use my finger because I can really feel where my finger is at all times. And then we're just going to close it up and just make sure that it's nice and aligned. You might have to kind of push some things around and nudge some things around to get it to fit nicely. But there we go, and hold that in place, let that set. Okay, so there's our top. Pretty accurate, I'd say. Now if you need to, again, you can kind of use your little dowel to push from the inside to help you make better contact with everything. Okay, and that looks like it's going to hold. So there is our little stem. I'm going to be patient here for a moment. Okay, so now that we have our little stem built, you can take these little tabs and kind of put them all in the center together. We're going to pop it right up on top here, like that. Okay, so you can see what that stem is going to look like. And then what we're going to do is we're going to glue each little triangular tab to one of the corresponding sides. Okay, so I'm just going to throw a little dot of glue onto one of these right now and just start with one and get it nice and anchored. It doesn't matter which way it's facing. Just make sure that it's nice and lined up. Okay, so I'm going to do it like this. Just pop it in there, maybe hold it with one hand, and just get that tab in place so that we can get it anchored. The rest of it should flow pretty easily for us once it's not moving around too much. Just make sure you get it nice and centered, nice and flush, and just hold that in place. You can see how I've got that tab there. Give that a second to set. And if you've got a little excess glue popping out of there, just rub it off while you can. That's fine. Okay, now we're going to go over to the opposite side. So the tab opposite of the one that we just glued down, and don't throw too much glue on there, just a little tiny dot of glue like that, and then just fold that over onto the inside here and take a look from this side, make sure that everything looks nice and flush, and then just press that down into place. I'll show you here what that looks like. Okay, so there's that tab right here that I just put down, and then we're gonna do the same thing here and here and here and here. Okay, so pick a tab, any tab, a little dot of glue, just like that, and then fold it over onto the inner wall there. Take a look from the outside, make sure that everything looks nice and flush, and it does. And then I would just move over to the side opposite of the side that you just did, and then do that one. Okay, so I'm going to move my finger out of the way. We're literally just pushing it up against the inside here. Okay, that looks good. Give it a push. And that just leaves two more. And these ain't gonna move anywhere, so you can probably just do both of them at the same time. Two more little dots of glue, push that over, press it into place. Last one, push that into place, and there we have our little lid with our beautiful stem. And that just leaves our panels. Now the reason I wanted to do the stem first is so that when we apply our panels, we don't encroach over the area too much. Okay. Now, one other thing too, since this kind of like really folds in a lot, let me zoom out here. I'm gonna grab a large dowel and I'm gonna take and just kind of curl these little scallops inward like that. Okay, so that they're kind of like that. So that when we put this on here, we're not fighting this thing to kind of curl down like that. Okay, so just kind of did that. Now you could probably, well, I don't know if I would do it with my fingers. You're gonna wanna get a dowel of some sort or something like a Sharpie maybe that you can wrap this around nicely so that it is nice and smooth and so that it just kind of curls in like that. Okay, so let's do that to all these pieces real quick before we start applying it. And that way we'll get a better end result. Just like that. Okay, a couple more. And then after we do this, we just need to pop our vellum in place and we're good to go. Okay, so you can see how we've got a nice little curve at the bottom here. So now again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're making this as a gift box and you want to hide the vellum, you're welcome to apply your vellum on the outside like this, and then we can put the panel over it. But I'm going to just put my vellum inside once I'm all done getting my panels on. Okay, so just like we did with the base, I'm going to start by putting glue on just the tip of this. I don't want to try to do too much all at once because that never ends well. And you want that to be nice and flush with pretty much up to the stem and nice and centered. There's going to be a little bit of a border on both sides. And then also, as you're laying this down, just make sure that it's matching up with the little cutouts for where the light's going to penetrate through the vellum. Okay, so just hold that in place, let that set, and then we can kind of flip it over like this. And if you want, what you can do is add a little bit of glue along the side just so that it kind of hugs that surface better. Okay, and then I'm going to take and I'm going to apply my glue all the way down to the scallops here, and I'm going to paint that glue all the way to the very, very end of those scallops. Okay, and then we can flip it over and just make sure that it's really hugging the surface, and then bring it all the way down and just hold the little scallops down in place down at the bottom there. And be patient because there's a little bit of resistance there. Okay, so there we go. And that's kind of what we're looking for. That looks pretty good. Okay, so moving right along here, we'll get the top one glued down. Don't overdo it on the glue. You're sitting there waiting for it to dry forever. Get it nice and centered, butting right up to the stem, and then kind of bring it down. Make sure that you have it in the correct spot so it's not obstructing the little cutouts. Okay. Just like that. Give that an extra second or so to dry. And then again, you can throw a little bit of glue along the outside. and then just get some glue out by the scallops. And get that painted right out to the very edge. There we go. And just kind of run your fingers along the very edges there. And right at the bottom. Just press that down and hold it. And there we go. That looks good. And again, if you've got, see like this one, I feel like I made this one as I was bringing it down, I had it a little more taut. The first one didn't sit as pretty. So I can just take a little bit of glue in this little area here where it's really kind of sticking up a lot. Just paint a little bit of glue under it and then just press that down and hold that down right there for a few extra seconds and let that kind of settle down and hug the main structure. There. You can see how much more smooth that looks now. Okay, so the rest of this is going to be pretty much repetitive. So this is a good place to, if you want, you can kind of pause me and then skip ahead, scrub through. The next thing I'm going to do is put the vellum on the inside. So when you see me grab the vellum as you're scrubbing, that's a cue for you to stop and kind of follow along with me on the next step. And then after that, we're pretty much done. I'm going to embellish this with a little bit of raffia around the stem. And then I've got this, this rhinestone banding that I'm going to put around the very base just to kind of add a little bit of bling. And that's really it, guys. And you know what I just realized here? It might be easier if we kind of skip putting the glue along the sides and just really focus on making it nice and taut at the very bottom along the scallops here. I feel like that might be the key to getting this to sit really flat. I'm just kind of actually like almost like pulling down with my thumbs as I'm squeezing it as well. And it's really hugging the surface a lot better. There we go. Yep, and that's actually sitting a lot more flat. And I mean, you didn't even have to put any glue along the side there. So, you know, there's more than one way to do things, and whatever way works better for you, by all means, go with it. Okay, so the next one here, get our glue on there, just line it up nice and centered, butting up against the stem, and press that down. Okay. And I'm just gonna put the glue on the scallops here. Okay, a little bit too much there. Just gonna dab that a little bit. Okay. And grab it nice and taut. And then get your fingers on the scallops and then just kind of, I'm literally kind of like doing a motion like this to pull the paper down as far as I can. And that is sitting nice and flush for me. There we go. Well, isn't that pretty? Let's see what that's going to look like. Oh, that's cute. Very cool. Okay. All right, so we got a couple more here, and then pretty much ready to call it a day on this project. Okay. Got a little excess glue there. Okay, so again, butting it up against the stem, nice and centered, so you got a nice even border. Make sure you're not obstructing the little cutouts, and just press that in place. There we go. Okay, I'll flip her over, get our glue around the scallop area. And I'm just going to hit that with my finger. If you got too much, it's not a good thing. Just ease up on the glue a little bit. Okay, got a little bit excess there, that's fine. All right, just kind of running my fingers along the sides here, and then right when I get down to the scallops, I'm kind of tugging on it, just pulling down with my thumb while also pressing it in. There we go. Beautiful. And that just leaves one more. Okay. Get that glue out there. Okay. And nice and centered. That looks good. Give that a press from the inside. There we go. Okay. Voila. Okay, just grab it nice and taut. Bring it all the way down, and then just kind of pull it down with your thumbs. There we go. Okay. So there we have it. There's our beautiful lid. Now we can flip this over, and this is where we're going to apply our vellum now. Okay, so I think the easiest way to do this would be just to put a little drop of glue right up at the top, and just make sure that all of the holes are covered up. So you can kind of start at the bottom and then just drop it right onto that little piece of glue and let that sit right there. And I'm just going to kind of do this in a assembly line sort of fashion. Just make sure that you got everything covered up. And we're just kind of anchoring this piece in place right now with just a little dot of glue there, just the top, so that we don't have to try to align it perfectly every time. It'll already be in place. We can just lift it up and throw a little bit of glue around the sections that we need the glue in. So I'm kind of looking at the bottom here, just making sure that the cutouts are covered up, and then I'm just dropping it onto that little dot of glue. I'll show you that again here in a second because I may not have demonstrated that very well. There, so just putting a little dot of glue there, and then I'm starting at the bottom, just making sure that the bottom is covering up the little cutouts, and then just dropping that right into the glue like that, and then just pressing it down just up at that top point right there. Okay. We still have to add more glue, but this is just kind of a nice quick way to be accurate without making a huge mess. Okay, so get that nice and centered and press it up against that little dot of glue. There we go, and one more. So again, just throwing a little dot of glue on there. There's no glue on the bottom here, so I can, just lay this down without worrying about making a huge mess. And then once I have it centered and I know that all of the little cutouts are covered, I can go ahead and press that down right onto that little spot of glue and just hold that down and let that set. Okay, so that's the last one. Now we're back to the first one, and what we can do is we can just lift this up. It should have a pretty good hold with that glue that we already glued it to. Okay, and then we can just kind of finish it off. Just throw a little bit of glue in between these little cutouts, and then a little bit at the bottom around the cutouts, just like that. And then literally you can just drop it right into place. And as you're doing it, just kind of make sure that it's hugging the walls there, so everything is nice and flush up against the inner wall so that it comes out like that. Okay, so just move on over to the next section here. Just gently lift it up. You could technically rip it off if you pull too hard. Okay, so I'm just lifting it up, and just some dots here and there. And then of course at the bottom, we want that bottom to sit nice and flush. Okay, but the cool thing is you can literally just drop it. As you're putting it back down, kind of push it down so that it's hugging the surface. And you can always go back and just kind of press down in little areas that you might have missed, but you can see what the end result is supposed to look like. Okay. There we go. Make sure you're hugging that surface. There we go. Almost looks like a jack-o'-lantern face. Okay, moving right along to the next one. If you want to, grab grab a little dowel or something to help you flip that vellum up. And get some glue in there. And just almost kind of pushing it down. All right, so, you know, this is pretty much gonna wrap it up here. Just have to finish gluing the vellum down. And then, as I mentioned, I'll probably spend a little time throwing some extra bling on this piece. So take a look at the final photo and you'll see what we did to kind of add to this and really kind of take it over the top. As I mentioned, I've got this rhinestone banding that I'm going to put right along the little lip of the lid. And then I'm probably going to do some liquid gold pearls on the actual lid itself, just to kind of add a few little blingy accents. And I think that's going to finish it off. Of course, if you're using this as a luminary, you can use that little submersible LED light with the remote control that we use in a lot of our projects, or any little tea light will work, obviously. If you need a link to that, you can find that in the tools or go-to tools. I think it's called supplies section of our official app. And that's going to do it for this project. So again, take a look at the final photo. You can throw a little bow or some raffia up at the top and take a look at what we did. You can see it all lit up as well. But I think it came out wonderful, and I hope yours did too. So if you enjoyed crafting with me today, please take a moment and hit that subscribe button. I'd appreciate that. And if you make this or anything from our new fall bundle, we'd love to see it. So join us in the official group on Facebook by doing a search for Dreaming Tree Group, where you can join myself and the almost 16,000 other dreamers that inspire us daily. So anyway, happy fall, y'all. Thanks for crafting with me, and I look forward to crafting with you again.
Stay on top of all things Dreaming Tree and engage with us today. Get the latest news and enter in our giveaways on Facebook. Get inspired by following us on Pinterest. Be the first to see our new product launches on Instagram. Do you prefer Twitter? Yep, we're there too. Watch our beautiful product trailers and assembly tutorials on YouTube. For more information, visit www.3dsvg.com. Live, craft, love, and dream.